Mr. Christopher De Souza, if you have any clarifications.
Yes, I thank Ms. Lim for the clarification. Actually, if Ms. Lim had listened to my speech carefully, I had actually used the Misuse of Drugs Act as an example of a situation where if there are new threats, i.e. new drugs in the forms of, for example, new psychoactive substances that have hitherto not been deemed as illicit under the MDA, then to include that in a schedule and to say that thereafter the consumption of those types of drugs would be illicit would make for a much more flexible regime. So I am suggesting that if there are broad categories of provisions, right? I use CBT as an example. If CBT is actually 406, but it can be read with 409. If you look at that, the broad context of it, is it sufficiently broad as a primary legislation to encompass different permutations in subsidiary legislation? And I never asked for it to act retrospectively. So I'm looking at possibilities to make the system deter future activities through a more flexible use of legal tools. That was my point.
Ms. Sylvia Lim.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, I would like to clarify that I know that he's not making a suggestion about retrospective laws. That would be against the Constitution in the first place. But what I'm expressing concern about is I do not know whether he's suggesting that the minister be given powers, even prospectively, to gazette new offences, new categories of offences that would come within certain sections. I mean, is he seeing that MHA is too cautious to have this bill to spell out certain categories, and the minister should be allowed to gazette new categories as and when he thinks it's necessary?
Mr. Christopher De Souza, it's a final clarification.
Actually, that is not what I am suggesting. I am suggesting a situation where if you look at other threats that we are facing, and one threat is drugs, that the threats morph, that the threats can change in future, and if we have a schedule, as we do in the Misuse of Drugs Act, or classification of drugs, that makes a certain type of drug which has yet been concocted and has harm as being illicit to consume, then I think that's a valuable example, or a valuable way of looking at whether we can develop our own criminal law in the form of the penal code to explore such an avenue. I'm not advocating a free rein of the minister to make willy-nilly new offences without coming to Parliament. That was not what I said in my speech.